My father came to Mumbai. He did his education and he brought one by one all of them. त्यांना एकच प्रश्न विचारला, लंडनमध्ये बियरचा भाव काय आहे?
That people should be either a doctor or engineer, which made no sense to me.
You did
Using
excellent,
technology and
excellent.
business. My kids are both interested in startups and in technology, and probably some of that comes from me. I remember when I left my career, you were like, what are you doing? You're the head of a group. You could not fathom it. I should have been straightforward and just taken the loans and done it myself.
Hey guys, Dr. Nene here. I practice as a cardiothoracic, vascular, and general surgeon, and I'm now a health tech innovator who wants to improve lifespans and lifestyles. So stay healthy, stay curious, and keep watching.
In your case, you grew up in Hindu colony, and
You
went to school where?
Hindu colony, I lived in 3rd lane, 4th lane was the Shishu Vihar, 5th lane was the 1st through 6th grade, 6th lane was the 7th grade to high school, and 8th lane was Ruya College. So I walked one road 22 years. One road. I never took a train.
So
I never even knew how to get a train ticket.
And was that because of your parents being overprotective?
No, because
Or is
it
that
just
because
happened to be the location of
you
the
lived
house.
in the neighborhood?
Yeah, that तिसरी चौथी पाचवी सगळ्या शाळा
And the
तिथेच होत्या.
schools were very good.
Very
All
excellent
those schools
schools.
are very well known.
त्यामुळे आम्हाला फायदा झाला त्याचा. पण सगळ्यात फायदा होता काय की वडिलांना 9 भावंड होती and my mother was alone, single. So when she married him, he had told her, everybody I'm gonna bring. So आमचं we never had a house की आमच्याकडे काका नाही आहेत, आत्या नाही आहे, आते भावंड नाही आहेत, मामे
आणि
भावंड.
ती
We had a full house.
महाराष्ट्रानंच आहे पण
गुजरातमध्ये वाढली.
नडियाद.
नडियादली.
Yeah, so this is an interesting thing because he विलेजमधून आला, मग त्यांनी मुंबईला आला आणि इथे भेटलं का तिथे विलेजमध्ये?
इथे लग्नाचं त्यांची झाली वेळ तेव्हा ते जस्ट लाईक एव्हरीबडी एल्स हर sister's husband because her father had passed away long time ago. ते डॉक्टर होते, ते वारले. माझी आजी आंधळी झाली. Right? She was married at 14. She had my mother at 17. She got blind at 22. My grandfather, the doctor, brought her to Mumbai. So अर्ध्या डोळ्यावर मुंबई दाखवली, then she lost her eyesight. And then he died 5-6 years later. पण तिची मोठी बहीण, सावत्र बहीण, कारण the grandmother was married to him when he had 3 older children. त्यांची मोठी मुलगी माझ्या आजीपेक्षा 2 वर्षांनी मोठी, लहान. तर त्या मैत्रिणी होत्या.
तुम्हाला सगळं वाढवलं?
हां, नाही तर तिचं लग्न दांडेकरांशी झालेलं होतं.
Okay.
So when she got married to him, she said, I have to bring my brothers because they have no one. आता ब्रदर बरोबर मग बहीण पण आली, सावत्र बहीण आणि आई पण आली. So all the 4 came to Bombay.
Interesting.
हां, त्या रामनिवासमध्ये राहत होते.
But I heard differently that your dad wanted to get educated and he came separately.
Yeah, dad, but ते माझ्या वडिलांकडनं.
Oh, I see. So this is your mom's
This is my
story.
mom. वडिलांकडनं ते दोघं भाऊ होते. So one of them decided to stay in Konkan, the other one wanted to come here, so they flipped. कोण येणार? तर ते काका इकडे आले, बाबी काका. ते राहायचे ह्याच्या युसुफ बिल्डिंगमध्ये, तिथे राहायचे. त्यांची मुलं ते इथे होते. My grandfather stayed home, but the older, म्हणजे my father came to Mumbai. He did his education and he brought one by one all of them.
And that was the edict, the mandate that your father said.
Not
or your grandfather.
No, grandfather had no mandate. तू गेला जा, तुला भावंडात न्यायचं तर नाही तर नेऊ नकोस.
तू सांगितलंच वेगळं. Or he told me differently. He said that you can go to get an education, but you have to make sure your other siblings get educated.
No, never did. He never did. He brought on his own. Shri Kaka, Pandu Kaka, Vasu Kaka,
And they all became
Jagu Kaka.
the heads of
They
this,
all
that, and the
came
other.
heads of everywhere.
Kaka was
Because they had my,
General of Telecommunications.
yeah.
Here.
So they had my
Kaka was
father's,
chief naval architect.
see, काकांचं एक्झाम्पल होतं ना त्यांना.
Which is interesting because these guys all came from the Gao.
Yeah,
And they
totally.
all
पण त्यांना एक्झाम्पल होतं. काका जेवढे वर चढले ना, आणि आई,
but his grandfather was not educated.
no, he's not, but he did in his own. So he set an example to all the brothers.
So this is an interesting point.
Yeah,
that it just takes
जयंतचे आई
one
वडील,
generation
पांडू काका,
to change the whole trajectory.
ओव्हरसीज कम्युनिकेशनचे हेड झाले ते
No, I would say even with dad it was an example too,
Yeah.
but with your father it was the same thing.
मच हायर एक्झाम्पल. आणि त्याने नुसतं आम्हाला नाही, त्यांच्या बहिणींना एकीला 8 मुलं, दुसरीला 7 मुलं, त्यांच्या मुलांना आणलं. म्हणजे आमची आत्ते भावंड पण आमच्याकडे वाढलेली आहेत.
Her dad was कॉटन एक्सचेंजचे त्याच्यात सर पुरुषोत्तम दास ठाकूरदास. When he retired,
He got the position.
So he was the secretary of that.
Yeah.
Secretary of that.
East India Cotton.
She was the Ganpati at Cotton Green, he started it there. So there are things.
त्यांची कंडिशन होती, त्यांच्या बहिणींना शिकायला नाही ना मिळालं. कोकणात लग्न झाली होती मोठ्या दोघींची. तिसरीचं लग्न आमच्याकडे आल्यावर झालं यमोहत्याच्या अरविंदच्या आईचं. शी वॉजंट एज्युकेटेड, राईट? अँड द फोर्थ वन विमलात्या, दे एज्युकेटेड हर अँड शी बिकेम मास्टर्स एज्युकेशनमध्ये. पण त्यांची म्हणून मला शिकवायचंच हे त्यांचं होतं. म्हणून BSc झाल्यावर आय वेंट टू लॉ स्कूल लाईक हिम.
Very evolved.
ऑन वन इयर लॉ स्कूल सकाळी करायचं आणि नंतर याला SND LTMG हॉस्पिटलला जायची मेडिकल टेक्नॉलॉजी करायला.
So it's a very evolved
just kept going everywhere.
attitude
Yep.
for someone in the 50s, 40s, and
All
40s,
because
50s,
of my
and
dad.
60s.
He was the example. Study, study, study.
And so then what happened? You guys got married, you moved to London,
Yep.
and I came along in 67.
You want to hear something funny? He went to interview him, Kaka आणि पांडू काका, because he had come from London. त्यांना एकच प्रश्न विचारला, लंडनमध्ये बिअरचा भाव काय आहे? त्यांना माहित नव्हता. तो
I
मुलगा
didn't
पास.
know, yeah.
He passed.
I somehow.
Because both my father and my
luckily-
uncle, they had lived in London.
We were joking
and in
about
Europe. No, it wasn't a joke. They both lived there, so they knew going to the pub or drinking, but they never drank themselves. So, and my condition was, पिणारा नको, स्मोक करणारा नको. तर स्मोक करणारा कळतो, पण पिणारा कळत नाही, म्हणून त्यांनी बिअरचा भाव विचारला. So both
Sada,
approved him.
Sida, Kokanasta, Brahman.
Approved.
Right? But what have you seen? So you were in London for about 10 years. I'm going to
9
move a
years.
little faster
Total
here.
9 years.
Nine years for you, 10 years for her, right?
8 years for me,
And then,
65 to 73.
yeah, I was there from 67 to 73.
You were born in 67.
Yeah, so I was there until 73, but I was in India for 2 years.
Yes.
And then we moved to New York.
Yes.
And then from there, we
One
were
year
in
in
LA.
New York and
Yeah.
then in LA, and that also because when we came from London, we had a choice. 21 दिवसाचं unlimited travel by any airline. 10 regional airlines. 10 regional
10
airlines.
regional airlines.
For
You can go
$175 for adults and
I
75
won't
for.
digress to that. I think
पण म्हणून आलो आपण LAला.
yeah, the other key, I see where you're going with that.
Yeah.
The other key questions, I thought he was coming for a job interview.
No.
That just happened
No,
because
It
that
just
also
happened.
happened because we
That's interesting.
came आणि इथे शोभा आंबेडकर राहायची. तिची आई माधवला मुलगा भेटला होता न्यूयॉर्कला. ते जाणार होती इंडियाला, आई वडील, आणि आई वडील हॅड अ स्टॉप इन लंडन. पण ज्यांच्याकडे जाणार होते त्यांचा कॉन्टॅक्टच होईना. माधव म्हणाला माझ्या घरी राहू दे. तसे ते माझ्या घरी राहिले, आपल्या घरी. तुम्ही लहान होतात. ही स्टील रिमेंबर्ड यू बिंग नॉटी. तुम्ही
nothing's changed.
I know.
I would
पण ते
say,
नेहमी म्हणायचे.
no, so this is one of those
पण
immigrant
no, that time,
equations.
let me make it short, की तिने सांगितलं तुम्ही जर कधी पण गेलात LAला माझ्या मुलीकडे जा. तर when we started traveling that 21 days travel, we came to LA and we went to Shobha's house. Because शोभाला माहित होतं आई वडिलांना हिने ठेवलेलं आहे, मी या म्हणून. Little did we know she had a baby 2 months old and another one. I know, but you know, people still welcome you.
But that's Indian culture, right?
No,
Would you
in
agree
culture.
with that?
पण तिथून आपण डिस्नेलँडला चाललो होतो. वाटेत बेक्टेलचं ऑफिस होतं इम्पिरियल
नारवा
कॉलेजला. तू मी आणि सीमा गाडीत बसलो. हे वर गेले इंटरव्ह्यू द्यायला. त्या माणसाला सांगितलं ह्याच्या
So I'm going to say this in English. Basically, they took a trip because they had a subsidized 21-day pass.
Unlimited travel.
They ended up meeting someone in London who said, if you're ever in LA, look up my sister. And then we were there touring, and Dad saw a Bechtel building, and somehow he got an interview there. Meanwhile, the three of us
We
were
are in the car.
And
Go.
Dad went and interviewed, and they hired him.
They hired him. So he comes down and says, त्यांनी यायला सांगितलं. म्हटलं जा वर आणि सांगा आम्ही येतोय. And he did. And they moved us. So that was the best part.
And so then going from there, the same drive for education was always there for
Always
both
there.
me and
Your-
Seema.
Yep.
I became the heart surgeon, she became
Lawyer.
the lawyer. We've had many kind of negotiations and debates as to what the algorithm was back then.
So it was almost serendipitous that we ended up in LA because that wasn't the plan.
No.
It just happened that way. Did you find any level of challenge because of where you were from in London? Because there was talk about prejudice and glass ceilings and the inability to rise to the height of the peak. Did you find
No,
that?
I didn't find that.
And what about in the US?
There also, I think the only thing I saw was that I was chief engineer for civil structural for power sector, and when it came for promotion, the guy from US, he was older also, but he was given promotion earlier. At the same time, because power sector was doing better than refinery, still they held me back a little bit.
Interesting.
And then over the period, and after about a year, they did that.
But when we first came, when you got the job, while we were waiting in the parking lot and you went up, they not only hired you because you had a MI structure.
No, not only. I worked on power plants in England. Imperial College is very well known. And then in London, in New York, I worked with Gibbs and Hill on the power plants. And Bechtel were mainly in power plants. And that's where I...
MI structure होती लंडनची.
Oh yeah, I had.
हायर केलं. पण जॉईन झाल्यावर त्यांना एक पगार जो दिला आम्हाला ट्रान्सफरच्या वेळी, it was less than some of the other people. So
But I didn't take it.
Madhav,
I told them that the pay is low, so they raised my pay. And then I...
when you joined and they found out that you didn't have that, neither did anybody else who was making higher. So he was within 3 or 4 months, you not only got the professional CE
Oh yeah, I got...
as well as SE, and nobody had it. So as soon as he got those, he also...
AC was very difficult. I got
So
AC.
clearly you had worked hard and studied.
Sure.
And you were a topper. So then moving onwards, as we got educated and did everything, the one question I was asking you is, you were not forced to do one thing or another, and yet your algorithm was that people should be either a doctor or engineer, which made no sense to me because my
It
aptitudes
didn't
were
make the sense to
business.
you, but it made sense to us because in those days, the salaries of an engineer will only go up to certain things. And yet what we found that the people who are doctors or lawyers, they were making...
No, but he's
Lawyers
saying
don't
doctor
even-
or
That
engineer.
wasn't an option.
He's
Doctors.
saying doctors or
Yeah.
engineers. What happened was,
Making a lot more money.
that goes back to it.
Money matter.
And business was also a thing.
Yeah, but we didn't know
No, but
many
that-
people in business.
Ram, that
Exactly.
that
But
doc,
All
was
education,
something-
education.
No, that was something you actually did later on.
Yes, not before.
And you flourished in that.
Yes.
In the 80s,
Yes.
when I was going to school.
Yes.
no, but that doctor engineer started in India. In India, what happens is after SSC, you go to FY, A and B group. A group is for engineers, B group is for doctors. You do the subjects together. Then the next year you have to select whether a doctor or engineer. That's what
It
people
starts
had
in
to
the
decide. And you know, when I was in school, doctors, engineers profession was one of the good professions. Afterwards, I mean, if you look forward, then commerce became very important.
What did?
Commerce means for business.
Yeah, for
And lot of then opportunities came. And nowadays,
What do you see now?
they have a lot of opportunities for the business more than doctors and engineers, I believe. I don't know up to date year.
I think, so this is an interesting point. Why I'm bringing it up is not to
No,
torture
that's
you or
okay.
sell you.
No.
I did finally what I wanted to do.
Yep.
20 years of medicine and then pivoted to creating instances which scale medicine.
You did
using
excellent,
technology and
excellent.
business.
Yeah.
But my thing is then the next generation, what do we tell them? And I think the algorithm in India has changed.
Yeah,
That-
and in America also.
They got
it
to
and in
changed.
America certainly.
Certainly, yeah.
And
I
be
mean, it's revenge of the
successful.
nerds, right? That
Sure,
all
sure.
of the guys who are going into technology for a brief spell became the billionaires.
Yep.
And the bottom line is that it's continuing to happen in
Sure,
startups
sure,
and that
sure.
action. The interesting part is my kids are both interested in startups and in technology, and probably some of that comes from me. One of them may be going.
Because they watch you, they look at you. How,
Yeah, and I've not told them one thing or another. I
yeah,
say,
by
follow your-
example. Yeah,
Follow your aptitudes and follow your passion.
sure.
And let's see where it leads you. And I would also say, in your case, you guys were first generation immigrants. I was second. And so as a result of that, you didn't have the insulation,
No.
which we did. In other words, if we went to ground, I couldn't
We
be
had
on
to
your
think
couch.
twice.
And so with our kids, I have the luxury of
That's
being
it.
able to support them.
Correct.
But at
Allow
some
them
point,
to, yeah.
yeah, but at some point you have to decide for yourself what you want to do. And the hard part is cutting the umbilical cord. And that's a very difficult one because you don't want to see them fail.
Sure.
But at the same time, you know, some paths are more secure than others. Becoming a doctor, you will have a job, you
No,
will
you
get paid
become a
well.
man if you achieve everything on your own, rather
So
than,
that's one thing, but
that's how we feel.
but the other thing is a lot of people do what they're not happy at
Yeah,
because it's
Unfortunately.
zabardasti.
yeah.
And my thing is, India is now awakening to the fact that they don't just need doctors and engineers, they
Oh, no.
need business people,
Lot of
they
other,
need
yeah.
marketing guys, they need
And market for
YouTubers.
everybody.
broad
Yeah, and more than that, I
spectrum.
think going forward, AI may wipe out 40% of the jobs. If that happens, your creativity is what will allow you to adapt. And so it's an important lesson which I think the kids teach the adults most of the way. I probably taught you guys, because when I remember when I left my career, you were like, what are you doing? You're the head of a group, you could not fathom it. And then later when I raised my first startup, you wanted to invest in it. And then you got what I was doing. And now you've seen what I've built and you're like, this is crazy, right?
Yes.
And I don't think anyone in our generation has done something like that. But the bigger question and message is, how do we guide our kids? And how do we allow them to breathe and think? Because in India, I'll tell you, it's very much the same. Everyone has very little learning in school. Tuitions are there to kind of get their marks up. Even in college, they never go to class because the teachers don't teach in class, they teach in tuitions.
Yeah.
And it's also that you can get marks. And my problem with that is what we need is people who are lifelong learners who are doing it for passion. You're not going to get that if you're forcing them to learn something they don't want to learn. But at the same time, I appreciate your position. You did the best you could with the in understanding that you want your son or daughter to have a career where they can feed their family and
Yes.
raise their kids.
That's all the
And
intention.
there's plenty of people out there in all professions, very few in doctoring or engineering, who don't have jobs. But in the other ancillary stuff, it's dicey. I think that brings another interesting point. As Maharashtrians, we tend to not see what's past our nose sometimes. And you won't go one extra station
No,
because
boldness
yeah,
in
you'll be
steps,
short-sighted
yeah.
about it. And that's changing. I'll tell you, if you look around now,
Sure.
that would be a question I would ask you. What do you see now of India? And what do you see as hope? Because what I see is brilliant. What I see we've achieved in 20 years is
Yeah.
mind-blowing, let alone, you know, my lifetime from the time I started coming here. And versus the West, which I would contend is a bit stagnant right now, mainly politically. Because whether it's Europe or whether it's the US, the infighting is so harsh right now that there's issues. And I think they'll get past them, but I see India as very focused. And I would say it'll be a top economy in the next 20
Yeah,
years.
I
It's
think
number
I
four.
think so. Yeah.
It's number 4 now, it's about to go to 3.
Sure.
And my guess is behind China and the US, it'll go to number 1 at some point.
Sure.
But what do you see when you see this? When you got off that plane now, what was your instinct?
Mind blowing.
Mind-blowing
Whatever
development.
we
Yeah.
see.
Absolutely.
And you know, we stopped in Dubai as well.
Yep,
You see Dubai and
Oh.
it's amazing what they've achieved as well.
I agree.
But now you look in your own backyard
Sure.
and you went home, you went to Hindu Colony. I don't know if you went to Shivaji Park,
Yeah.
but did you see what's been built there?
I went-
Everything is
I went there.
Everything is multi-story. I can't believe it.
It's like skyscrapers.
The year we came here, when you were 8 years old, तुझ्या मुंजीला आलेलं होतं. त्यावेळी तसंच सगळं जुनं होतं, right? 8 वर्षाच्या नंतर you came here every year for 4 years. Seema came later too. But they didn't see much, even then, you didn't see much changes. But the changes occurred in the last 20 years.
And so one question, I mean, culturally we're different. Seems like all the southern countries are a little warmer in how they behave.
Yeah.
They'll still give you a glass of water when you come to the door. They'll still make sure that all guests are treated like God. That's a little different in some other parts of the world where you don't even meet your neighbors in most cases.
So England is like that.
And all the European, the northern European countries are like that. Even the US to some degree in parts, right?
Sure.
US is more friendlier.
How do you preserve
We found
that?
London.
How do you preserve that? Because now we're living in an urban situation.
How do you preserve that? I think it's very easy. I will give you an example. You know, in my business, I took a young lady that I had sold house maybe 21 years ago. She retired as a school teacher. I said, okay, if you take a license, I'll teach you. So she took a license 7 years ago.
And she's Indian or American?
She's Indian. But what I
She's
told her, I
Marathi.
said, go for a walk in the park. If you can, or go stand in a line in Walmart or somewhere. If you can talk to people but before you, after you, and are able to get their phone number in one go, then you are cut out to
So
be
do you
the
think
person.
that social instinct
Absolutely.
is there?
You got to be, social instinct is there. What do you talk based on what you meet? You know, if they have small children, you compliment on the children, you compliment on the dress. Hey, where did you get that?
And where do you think
Starts a
social media-
conversation. Conversation.
That's a salesmanship.
What do you think social media fits into that? We just went through a pandemic. You were isolated for 2 years.
Social media,
4
watch
years.
and learn. That's what it is.
2 years,
basically.
but 4 years
I
for
know, but
YouTube.
people took to the YouTube, people took to, you know, and they watch and learn. That's basically what they do.
I found it a tremendous source of connecting with people.
Yeah.
And Twitter, believe it or not, trolls or no trolls, I make a lot of friends on Twitter. And so I think
There
it's
I'm not
just,
finding a lot of people on YouTube or trolls, you know.
I'm finding a lot of
Not
like-minded
my
people.
generation,
And then
or not Indians, I haven't found them.
I would
Maybe
say
the younger
your
generation.
generation, it's an interesting point.
Yeah,
Facebook is
yeah.
what they use.
Yeah.
And Twitter is real time and Insta is
I'm not even on
youngsters.
Facebook, Ram. I am not even on Facebook.
Ah, but Facebook is what they do.
I don't need it.
Anyway, I've used a lot of my time here, you guys, and I appreciate you talking to us. I think spoken history is very important because this records it for future generations and also records your learnings. What would you want to say to the audience of families both here and abroad in the things you guys went through, and what would you say is most important now?
I think one of the main things is you look at where you want to go and all your efforts, you may see the alternatives or what you have to do. When you select the alternatives which may best serve your achievement later, I think you just go full-hearted,
You clearly did that with your engineering.
Absolutely.
And what about you?
What
Same,
can I say? Same thing.
same thing. I think in your case, I didn't mention before, you got admission into Stanford. And
Yeah.
you got admission, direct admission
I
to
think we said.
WashU, which was for a couple of years, it was #1 in US medical schools. And then you asked me that time, but you were keen or pushing towards
We wanted Stanford.
going to Stanford.
I think Stanford was the Imperial College.
No, but
Only we
yeah,
couldn't
but
afford it.
I know.
We
What,
didn't
that
have the
was the issue.
scholarship. That was kind of the issue.
no,
It wasn't.
the issue, let me tell you what, at that time, I told you, looking at practically like an engineer does, that when you have a guaranteed medical seat, I told you that time that in WashU, get the maximum grades in the years before 4-year degree, and then if you get in Stanford, go to Stanford or any other college you want. But don't leave because getting a seat for medical directly from high school was very difficult. I mean, there are very few seats. And that, I think, it was good you continued with WashU, and you
My
did
view
very
is,
well.
Going back, I think it was short-sighted because I would have prevailed either way.
I think so. I think so. Yeah, I think.
To know that.
But maybe I want to be
Had enough
safe.
confidence in
I know.
the child.
Yeah.
No, no,
I was
no.
a topper in my grades.
No, I know, but you
So-
know what?
so this
What
is an
if
important
there is
lesson.
No,
always
but in
one
the exams, Ram, sometimes people do not do very well.
But I would say too, you can't control everything.
No.
And the
No, I
child has to
understand.
take
Yeah, yeah.
credit
Yeah.
and the downfall if they fail. At the same time, at Stanford, where Larry and Sergey and all the other guys creating the internet. So, you know, I told you guys my interest was business and technology. And when I pivoted now, I've created all
That's good, you changed.
But my point to others is that you did it. I mean, you actually epitomized it, that you did what you wanted to do. You did it because you saw that, but you doggedly pursued it.
Oh, absolutely.
And I should have been straightforward and just taken the loans and done it myself. But it's not an easy equation when you're 18 years old.
You did good, Ram.
Yeah, but I lost 20 years of my life.
No, you did
And
quite
so
good.
I think that's another story for another day.
Yeah.
Everything has turned out fine, but
To me, everything happens
you
for a
can't
reason.
do startups
Isn't that true?
simply when you're 50-something years old. And so that is as it is. I've been successful in everything I did, but I would have been then too. But anyway, this is an interesting debate. What do you guys think? Leave in the comments below. We've enjoyed kind of chatting with Mom and Dad, and this is a lot of what you guys have probably gone through as well. We're going to do some cool stuff with recipes with Mom and Dad in a second, and you'll see that on another episode. But thank you so much for joining us. As usual, don't forget to hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you'll make sure that you see all our new episodes. And most of all, don't forget to share this, because this is one of those episodes that I'll bet you is central to most dialogues in Southeast Asia, if not certainly in India, but all of Southeast Asia. And I'm grateful to both of these guys because they worked their tails off to get me to where I am. And the fact that they stuck in there and they did what they did is testament, and you know, all of us are testament to them. And so we give thanks for that. But if there's any questions or anything else, leave them in the comments below. Love to hear what your thoughts are on this. Thank you so much for joining us.